What if the person being arrested at an airport was the one person everyone on the plane actually needed? And what if one decision made in less than a minute kept an entire aircraft from ever leaving the runway? Stay with this story, because what happened next changed more than one officer's career. It changed the way an entire airport thought about respect. It was just after 7 o'clock on a quiet Tuesday morning, at the fictional Westbridge International Airport. The departure terminal was already busy. Families pulled rolling suitcases. Business travelers hurried toward their gates. Airport announcements echoed through the large terminal as another day of flights began. Near Gate 14, a quiet black passenger sat alone by the window. His name was Daniel Brooks. He wore a simple gray jacket, dark jeans, and comfortable walking shoes. Beside him rested a worn black carry-on bag with a few travel stickers from different cities. In his hands was a small notebook where he occasionally wrote short notes before looking back out at the runway. Nothing about him attracted attention. He wasn't making phone calls. He wasn't speaking loudly. He wasn't bothering anyone. He simply waited patiently for boarding to begin. An elderly couple sitting nearby smiled politely. "Looks like we'll finally be home before lunch," the man said. Daniel smiled back. "I hope your flight is smooth." His calm voice immediately made the couple feel comfortable. Across the terminal, Airport Police Officer Mark Collins had just begun his morning patrol when his radio came alive. "Unit 7, please respond to Gate 14. Mark reached for his radio. Unit 7 responding. Dispatch continued. "We've received a report about a passenger acting suspiciously near the boarding area." Officer Collins looked toward Gate 14. His eyes quickly settled on Daniel sitting quietly by himself. "I'm on my way." Within seconds, he walked toward the gate. Several passengers looked up as the uniformed officer approached. Daniel noticed him but remained seated. Officer Collins stopped directly in front of him. "Good morning." Daniel closed his notebook. "Good morning, officer. Are you traveling today?" "Yes." "Destination?" "Riverton." Officer Collins glanced at the worn carry-on bag. "Is that your only luggage?" "It is." The officer studied Daniel for several seconds. His calmness seemed to make him even more suspicious. "What were you writing?" Daniel held up the notebook. "Just a few personal notes." "Mind if I see it?" Daniel politely handed it over. The pages contained nothing unusual. Simple travel reminders. A few numbers. A short checklist. Officer Collins handed it back. Then he pointed toward the carry-on. "I'd like to inspect your bag." Daniel nodded. "Of course." He slowly placed the bag on the floor. Before opening it, he looked up and asked one respectful question. "Officer, have I done something wrong?" Officer Collins didn't answer. Instead, he folded his arms. "Open the bag." Passengers waiting nearby quietly watched. The elderly couple exchanged worried glances. A young businessman removed one earbud. Even the gate agent paused while scanning boarding passes. Daniel calmly unzipped the carry-on. Inside were neatly folded clothes, a tablet inside a protective case, a sealed envelope marked confidential, and a small black phone unlike any ordinary cell phone. Officer Collins frowned. "What's all this?" Daniel answered honestly. "My work." The officer picked up the black phone. Before he could examine it, Daniel spoke quietly. "Officer, I'd appreciate it if you handled that carefully." Officer Collins looked directly into his eyes. "And why is that?" Daniel remained completely calm. "Because if that phone doesn't reach the right person today." He paused. "This flight may never leave the ground." The people standing nearby fell completely silent. Officer Mark Collins stared at Daniel Brooks for a moment. Then he laughed quietly. "So you're telling me this entire flight depends on that little phone?" Daniel didn't react. "I'm simply saying it's important." The officer shook his head. "We'll decide how important it is." He placed the phone on a nearby inspection table instead of handing it back. Passengers around Gate 14 began whispering. What did he mean? Why would the flight depend on him? No idea. The elderly couple looked at Daniel with concern. The older woman spoke softly. "I hope this is all just a misunderstanding." Daniel smiled politely. "So do I." Officer Collins pointed toward the sealed envelope. "And what's inside this?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "Documents." "What kind of documents?" "Work documents." The officer reached for the envelope. Daniel respectfully raised one hand. "Officer, I'd appreciate it if that stayed sealed." Collins looked at him with a slight smile. That makes me want to open it even more. Daniel lowered his hand. I understand. Again. No argument. No anger. Only patience. The officer turned toward another airport police officer who had just arrived. Lisa, stay with him. Officer Lisa Turner looked at Daniel. Unlike Collins, she noticed something unusual. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't sweating. He wasn't looking for a way to leave. He simply stood there calmly, almost as if he knew something everyone else didn't. She quietly asked, Sir, is there a reason you're so calm? Daniel smiled gently. Worry has never solved a problem. Before Lisa could reply, the black phone suddenly began ringing. The sound immediately caught everyone's attention. Officer Collins picked it up. The screen displayed only 4 words. Priority flight operations. He frowned. Interesting. Daniel looked at the phone. Officer. Please let me answer it. Collins folded his arms. Not happening. The phone continued ringing. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then it stopped. Daniel quietly looked toward the large windows overlooking the runway. A commercial aircraft sat ready for departure. Its boarding door was still open. Ground crews moved around it with their usual routine. Daniel checked his watch. Then he slowly took a deep breath. Officer Lisa noticed. Were you expecting that call? Daniel nodded. Yes. Was it important? It always is. Before anyone could ask another question, the airport public announcement system made an unexpected announcement. Attention passengers traveling on Flight 728 to Riverton. The terminal became quiet. We apologize for the delay. Boarding has been temporarily paused. Passengers looked at one another in confusion. But they were about to board. What happened? Officer Collins looked toward the departure gate, then back at Daniel. Daniel said nothing. His calm expression never changed. Just then, the black phone began ringing again. This time, it rang louder. Longer. More urgently. The screen flashed a new message. Final contact attempt. Officer Lisa looked at Officer Collins. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Mark, I think someone really needs to speak with him. Before Collins could respond, his police radio suddenly crackled. Unit 7. Dispatch sounded unusually serious. Remain at your location. A brief pause followed. Then came the words that made everyone standing near Gate 14 look toward Daniel. A senior airport operations director is on the way to meet your passenger. Officer Mark Collins slowly lowered his radio. A senior airport operations director. For one passenger. It didn't make sense. He looked back at Daniel Brooks. Daniel stood exactly where he had been from the beginning. Calm. Patient. Almost as if delays didn't bother him at all. Officer Lisa Turner quietly stepped closer. Sir. Daniel looked at her. Yes, officer. Were you expecting someone from airport operations? Daniel answered honestly. I was expecting someone. But not like this. His answer only created more questions. Around Gate 14, passengers continued whispering. The departure screen still showed one word. Delayed. The elderly man who had spoken with Daniel earlier looked out toward the runway. The plane should have left by now. His wife nodded. I've never seen boarding stop this suddenly. Just then, the black phone began vibrating again. This time, it didn't ring. Instead, the screen lit up with a bright notification. Urgent response required. Officer Collins looked at it. Then at Daniel. You seem very popular. Daniel smiled politely. I wouldn't describe it that way. Then how would you describe it? I'm responsible for answering important calls. Officer Collins wasn't impressed. Not today. He slipped the phone into his evidence pouch. Officer Lisa frowned. Mark. He looked at her. What? Maybe we should verify who he is before we keep delaying this. Collins crossed his arms. I already know enough. Daniel quietly spoke. Officer. Collins looked at him. I've answered every question you've asked. I've cooperated with every instruction. I've made no attempt to leave. He paused. I'm only asking for one opportunity to answer that phone. Collins shook his head. My decision stands. Daniel simply nodded. I understand. Again. No anger. No frustration. Only patience. Officer Lisa couldn't stop watching him. She had worked airport security for 8 years. Most innocent passengers became nervous. Most guilty passengers became defensive. Daniel was neither. His calm confidence didn't feel rehearsed. It felt natural. Almost professional. Suddenly, Two airport operations employees hurried toward gate 14 carrying tablets. They weren't running, but they were moving much faster than normal. The first employee looked around until he spotted Daniel. Relief immediately appeared on his face. There he is. The second employee stopped, then noticed the police officers. Then noticed Daniel. Then noticed the evidence pouch containing the black phone. His smile disappeared. Officer Collins stepped forward. "Can I help you?" The first employee answered politely. "We're looking for Mr. Daniel Brooks." Collins pointed toward Daniel. "Why?" The employee hesitated. "I'm afraid I can't discuss that publicly." Officer Collins folded his arms. "You'll have to." The employee looked toward Daniel. Daniel gently shook his head. "Not yet." The employee immediately understood. "Sir." He turned back to Collins. "Could you at least verify his identification?" Collins sighed. "Everyone keeps asking me that." The employee gave a respectful nod. "Because it's very important." Officer Lisa noticed something else. Neither employee looked surprised to find Daniel. What surprised them was that he was still standing there. Before anyone could continue, every departure screen inside the terminal suddenly changed at the same time. Passengers looked up. Gate agents stopped working. Even Officer Collins turned toward the monitors. Across the airport appeared a new message. Flight 728, delayed until further notice. A heavy silence filled the terminal. Then one of the airport employees quietly whispered to Daniel, "Sir, the captain is refusing pushback until you arrive." Officer Collins slowly turned toward Daniel. For the very first time, he wasn't smiling anymore. The words echoed through the terminal. "The captain is refusing pushback until you arrive." For several long seconds, no one moved. Officer Mark Collins looked from the airport employee to Daniel Brooks. Then back again. "What do you mean, the captain is waiting for him?" The airport employee quickly realized he had said too much. He lowered his voice. "I'm sorry, officer. I can't discuss operational matters." Officer Collins stepped closer. "You already started. So finish." The employee looked toward Daniel. Daniel remained calm. He gave a small shake of his head. "Not yet." The employee understood immediately. "I'm not authorized to explain." Officer Collins sighed in frustration. "This is getting ridiculous." He pointed toward Daniel. "He's just a passenger." Daniel quietly smiled. "Today, I happen to be both." Those words instantly caught everyone's attention. Officer Lisa Turner looked at Daniel. "What does that mean?" Daniel answered gently. "It means my work requires me to travel. And sometimes." He paused. "My arrival matters." Before Lisa could ask another question, the black phone inside the evidence pouch began ringing again. This time the ringtone was different. Longer. Sharper. More urgent. Officer Collins removed the phone. The screen displayed another message. "Aircraft awaiting final clearance." His confident expression slowly faded. "What kind of phone is this?" Daniel answered honestly. "A work phone." "And who keeps calling you?" "The people expecting me." The phone stopped ringing. Only 2 seconds passed before it rang again. The entire waiting area had become unusually quiet. Passengers were no longer checking their own phones. They were watching Daniel. The elderly woman whispered to her husband, "I don't think he's an ordinary traveler." Her husband nodded. "Neither do I." Just then, another announcement came over the airport speakers. "Attention passengers traveling on Flight 728. A brief pause followed. "We apologize for the continued delay. Additional operational procedures are currently in progress." Confused voices filled the terminal. "What operational procedures? Why won't they tell us?" Officer Lisa quietly looked through the large windows toward the aircraft. Something immediately caught her attention. Ground engineers had surrounded the airplane. Several airport service vehicles were parked beside it. Even the captain remained standing outside the cockpit door speaking with maintenance staff. Lisa frowned. "That's unusual." Officer Collins looked outside. "What's going on?" Before anyone answered, 3 senior airport executives walked quickly through the terminal. They weren't talking to passengers. They weren't looking at departure screens. They were searching for someone. The moment they saw Daniel, every one of them changed direction and walked straight toward him. The oldest executive stopped only a few feet away. His face showed clear relief. "There you are, Mr. Brooks." Daniel smiled politely. "Good morning. We've been trying to reach you." "I know." The executive glanced at the evidence pouch containing the black phone. Then at Officer Collins. His expression became serious. "Officer." His voice remained respectful. "I strongly recommend that you verify Mr. Brooks' identity before taking another step." Officer Collins folded his arms. "Everyone keeps telling me that." The executive nodded. "Because once you know who he is." He paused and looked directly at Daniel. "You'll understand why Flight 728 hasn't left the ground." At that exact moment, a black executive vehicle stopped outside the terminal entrance. As soon as the airport executives saw it, their expressions changed. One of them quietly whispered, "They're here already." And for the first time since this began, even Daniel looked toward the entrance with genuine surprise. The black executive vehicle came to a smooth stop outside the terminal entrance. The glass doors slid open. A man in a Navy business suit stepped inside, followed by two airport operations managers carrying tablets and sealed folders. The moment the senior airport executives saw him, they immediately walked forward. "Good morning, Director." The man nodded politely but didn't stop. His eyes searched the terminal until they found Daniel Brooks. "There you are." Daniel smiled. "Good morning. I'm sorry for the delay." The director looked at the police officers before answering. "It appears you weren't the one causing it." Officer Mark Collins stepped forward. "I'm Officer Collins. We're conducting an investigation." The director nodded respectfully. "I understand." He looked toward Daniel. "Has Mr. Brooks cooperated?" Officer Collins answered. "Yes." "Has he resisted?" "No." "Threatened anyone?" "No." "Tried to leave?" "No." The director slowly nodded. Then he asked the same question everyone else had asked. "Have you verified his identity?" Officer Collins sighed. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" The director answered calmly. "Because everything depends on the answer." Daniel remained silent. He never interrupted. He never demanded special treatment. Officer Lisa Turner quietly noticed something unusual. The director wasn't treating Daniel like an employee. He wasn't treating him like a passenger either. The respect between them suggested something much bigger. Before anyone could continue, the black work phone began ringing once again. This time, everyone looked at it. The screen flashed a new message. Final safety authorization required. Officer Lisa looked at the display. Her expression changed. "Mark, I really think he should answer." Officer Collins hesitated. For the first time that morning, he wasn't completely sure of his decision. Daniel spoke quietly. "Officer, if you allow me 60 seconds, I can answer that call. I'll stay right here. I'm not going anywhere." His calm voice made the request sound completely reasonable. But before Collins could respond, another airport operations manager hurried toward the group. He looked out the terminal windows. Then back at the director. "Sir, the captain is requesting an update." The director asked one question. "Has the aircraft been released?" The manager shook his head. "No. Maintenance is still waiting." Passengers standing nearby exchanged confused looks. The elderly man whispered, "Waiting for what?" No one answered. Officer Collins finally looked directly at Daniel. "What exactly do you do?" Daniel smiled politely. "I help make sure people travel safely." Collins frowned. "That's not a real answer." Daniel nodded. "Not yet." Just then, one of the pilots from Flight 728 entered the terminal wearing his full uniform. He walked quickly toward the group. The moment he saw Daniel, he stopped. A look of relief crossed his face. "Mr. Brooks. I'm glad you're here." Daniel gave a small nod. "I'm sorry for the delay." The captain smiled. "Don't apologize." He paused before looking at Officer Collins. "We haven't moved that aircraft because we're still waiting for his final decision." The terminal became completely silent. Officer Collins slowly turned toward Daniel. His voice was almost a whisper. "Final decision. About what?" Before Daniel could answer, the director carefully removed a leather identification wallet from his jacket. He slowly opened it and held it toward Officer Collins. As Collins read the identification card, the confidence disappeared from his face. His eyes widened. Then he looked back at Daniel Brooks. Finally beginning to understand why an entire airplane had remained on the ground waiting for one quiet passenger. Officer Mark Collins held the leather identification wallet in both hands. He read the first line. Then he read it again. His confident expression slowly disappeared. Officer Lisa Turner stepped closer. "Mark, what does it say?" For several long seconds, he couldn't answer. Finally, he looked up at Daniel Brooks. "You're..." Daniel remained calm. "Yes." The airport director gently closed the identification wallet before Officer Collins could read any further. "The rest of that information is confidential." He looked toward Daniel with quiet respect. "Mr. Brooks travels without announcing his position for a reason." Officer Collins frowned. "What reason?" The director answered carefully. "So every inspection is completely honest." Those words immediately caught Lisa's attention. She slowly looked toward Daniel. "Inspection?" Daniel nodded once. "Yes." Before anyone could ask another question, the black work phone rang again. This time, the airport director picked it up himself. He answered immediately. "Airport operations." Everyone watched him closely. He listened for several seconds without speaking. Then his face became serious. "We understand. We'll have him there as quickly as possible." The call ended. Officer Collins couldn't stay quiet anymore. "What's happening?" The director looked toward the large windows overlooking the runway. "Flight 728 is still waiting. But not because of paperwork." At that exact moment, two airport engineers hurried past the gate carrying large equipment cases. They weren't walking anymore. They were almost running. Daniel quietly watched them disappear down the jet bridge. Officer Lisa noticed. "You expected that?" Daniel answered honestly. "I was hoping they wouldn't need to go." His answer made her even more curious. "What do you mean?" Daniel took a slow breath. "When a flight is delayed for safety." He paused. "I always hope the problem turns out to be small." Those words sent a chill through everyone standing nearby. Passengers who had been complaining only moments earlier suddenly became silent. The elderly couple looked out toward the aircraft. For the first time, they weren't worried about being late. They were worried about why the plane wasn't leaving. Just then, another airport engineer rushed into the terminal. He stopped beside the director, breathing heavily. "Sir." The director immediately asked, "What did they find?" The engineer looked around before lowering his voice. "We're still checking." But the captain was right to wait. Officer Collins felt his heart begin to race. "What exactly are you checking?" The engineer hesitated, then looked toward Daniel. "We can't continue until Mr. Brooks reviews the findings." Every eye turned toward Daniel. He hadn't demanded attention. He hadn't argued. He hadn't even mentioned his job. Yet everyone seemed to be waiting for him. Officer Collins slowly looked down at the handcuffs hanging from his belt. Only minutes earlier, he had been certain he was dealing with an ordinary passenger. Now, an entire flight crew, airport executives, engineers, and operations staff, were all waiting for one quiet man carrying a worn black bag. Before anyone could speak again, the captain of Flight 728 came running back into the terminal. He walked straight toward Daniel. His face was calm. But his voice wasn't. "Mr. Brooks." He paused to catch his breath. "I think you need to see this yourself." Daniel looked directly into the captain's eyes. One glance was enough. His calm smile disappeared for the very first time that morning. Without saying a word, he immediately started walking toward the aircraft. And everyone standing there knew. Whatever had just been discovered was far more serious than anyone had imagined. Daniel Brooks followed the captain down the jet bridge without saying a word. The airport director walked beside him. Officer Lisa Turner came a few steps behind. Even Officer Mark Collins followed, no longer speaking with confidence. His earlier certainty had been replaced by one question. Who was this man? As they reached the aircraft door, the captain stopped. "Mr. Brooks, it's in the forward equipment bay." Daniel nodded. "I'll take a look." He carefully opened his worn carry-on and removed a small flashlight, a pair of protective gloves, and a slim electronic inspection device. Officer Collins stared. Those were in his bag the whole time. The airport director smiled slightly. He never travels without them. Daniel stepped inside the aircraft. The cabin was completely quiet. Passengers had already been asked to remain inside the terminal. Only the flight crew and two engineers were on board. One engineer pointed toward an open floor panel near the front of the aircraft. "We found something unusual during the routine check." Daniel knelt beside the panel. He didn't rush. He carefully examined every wire, every connector, and every warning indicator. No one interrupted him. Nearly a full minute passed in complete silence. Finally, Daniel looked up. "When was this part replaced?" The engineer quickly checked his tablet. 3 days ago. Daniel nodded slowly. "I thought so." The captain leaned forward. What did you find? Daniel gently pointed toward a small connector hidden behind a wiring harness. It isn't seated correctly. The engineer's eyes widened. I completely missed that. Daniel remained calm. It was easy to miss. Officer Collins couldn't understand. Would something that small really matter? Daniel stood and looked directly at him. Sometimes the smallest mistake creates the biggest problem. Those simple words filled the cabin with silence. The engineers immediately began checking the connector again. Within seconds, one of them looked back in disbelief. He's right. The locking pin never fully engaged. The captain slowly removed his headset. If we had departed, the engineer answered quietly, we might have received a serious systems warning after takeoff. Officer Collins felt his stomach tighten. He looked toward the aircraft windows. Hundreds of passengers had been waiting only a short distance away. Without this delay, the problem might never have been discovered before departure. The airport director turned toward Collins. This is why Mr. Brooks travels as an ordinary passenger. No advance notice. No special treatment. Only honest inspections. Officer Collins lowered his head. I understand now. Daniel gently removed his gloves. This isn't about proving anyone wrong. He smiled kindly at the engineers. It's about giving everyone another chance to catch what others might miss. The engineers immediately corrected the connector and completed another inspection. Several tense minutes passed. Finally, every system showed green. The captain let out a long breath. Everything checks out. Daniel carefully reviewed the final report. He signed the digital inspection form. Then he handed the tablet back to the captain. You have my approval. Relief spread across every face in the cabin. But before anyone celebrated, the airport director quietly placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. There's one more thing. Daniel looked at him. The passengers know there was a delay. He paused. But they still don't know the real reason. Daniel smiled gently. They don't need to know my name. They only need to know they're flying safely. The director nodded with respect. Yet outside the aircraft, Officer Collins knew there was still one conversation he needed to have before Flight 728 could finally leave the ground. The engineers secured the final panel and stepped back. One by one, they checked the aircraft systems again. Green. 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 Every indicator now showed normal. The captain smiled for the first time that morning. It looks good. Daniel Brooks didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly through the front of the aircraft, looking at every detail one last time. Officer Mark Collins watched from the doorway. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Only an hour earlier, he had believed Daniel was just another passenger. Now every engineer, every pilot, and every airport executive was waiting for his final word. Daniel finally stopped beside the cockpit door. He looked at the captain. Run the final checklist one more time. The captain nodded without hesitation. Right away. Officer Collins quietly asked the airport director, does he always do that? The director smiled. Always. He never rushes. He never assumes. And that's exactly why people trust his judgment. Several more minutes passed. The cockpit crew carefully completed every item on the checklist. No one spoke unless necessary. The silence itself showed how seriously everyone took Daniel's work. Finally, the first officer looked up. Captain. Everything is confirmed. The captain turned toward Daniel. We're ready. Daniel reviewed the digital report one final time. He carefully pressed his approval onto the secure tablet. A small confirmation tone sounded. Within seconds, airport operations received the clearance. Across the terminal, the departure board changed once again. Flight 728 boarding passengers waiting at Gate 14 looked up in relief. Applause broke out across the waiting area. Many believed the delay had simply been another routine airport issue. Only a handful of people knew how close the aircraft had come to departing before the hidden problem was discovered. Officer Collins slowly walked toward Daniel. His voice was quieter than ever before. Mr. Brooks. Daniel turned with a friendly smile. Yes, officer. I owe you more than an apology. Daniel gently shook his head. You don't owe me anything. I do. Collins lowered his eyes. I judged you before I knew anything about you. I thought your appearance told me your story. Daniel smiled kindly. It never does. Those 4 words stayed with everyone standing nearby. The airport director looked at Collins. The best officers aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who learn from them. Collins nodded. I won't forget today. Just then, One of the engineers hurried back from the aircraft carrying a small metal component sealed inside a clear evidence bag. He handed it to Daniel. "We removed the faulty connector." Daniel examined it carefully. After a few seconds, his calm expression changed. He looked back at the engineers. Then at the captain. Then toward the airport director. This wasn't a simple installation mistake. The smiles disappeared. The director stepped closer. "What do you mean?" Daniel slowly held up the damaged connector. "It didn't fail on its own." He paused. "It was manufactured with a hidden defect." The entire group fell silent. If Daniel hadn't been delayed at the gate, no one would have found it before takeoff. And suddenly, everyone realized the story wasn't over yet. Daniel Brooks carefully placed the faulty connector back into the clear evidence bag and handed it to the airport director. "This should be sent to the manufacturer for a full investigation," he said calmly. The director nodded. "It will be." The captain looked at the small metal part and slowly shook his head. "It's hard to believe something this small delayed an entire flight." Daniel smiled. Small things often carry the biggest responsibility. Officer Mark Collins stood quietly beside them. The words stayed with him. For the first time in years, he realized how dangerous assumptions could be. Not just in aviation, but in everyday life. The airport director turned toward the captain. "Is the aircraft fully cleared now?" The captain checked his tablet one last time. "Yes. The repairs have been completed. The inspection has been approved. We're ready for boarding." A message immediately appeared across every departure screen in the terminal. "Flight 728 now boarding." Cheers spread through Gate 14. Parents gathered their children. Business travelers picked up their laptops. The elderly couple smiled at one another. "I guess we're finally going home," the old man said. His wife nodded. "And thanks to the quiet gentleman we met this morning." Daniel walked back toward the gate with the airport director. As he entered the terminal, several passengers recognized him. They didn't know his job title. They didn't know his responsibilities. But they knew one thing. Their flight had waited for him. The elderly woman approached first. "Sir." Daniel smiled. "Yes. Thank you." He gently shook his head. "You don't need to thank me." She smiled warmly. "I think I do. You helped keep all of us safe." Daniel simply nodded. "I'm glad everyone will reach home safely." Officer Collins slowly walked over. He stood silently for a moment before speaking. "Mr. Brooks. I've spent years believing experience meant I always knew what I was seeing." He paused. "Today proved I still have a lot to learn." Daniel looked at him kindly. "The day we stop learning," he smiled, "is the day we stop improving." Collins nodded. "I'll remember that." Just then, the airport director received a call. He listened carefully before smiling. He looked at Daniel. "The manufacturer has already requested the inspection report." Daniel wasn't surprised. "I expected they would." The director continued. "They also asked for one more thing." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "They've requested that you personally brief their engineering team." The captain smiled. "I can't think of anyone better." Daniel gave a modest smile. "If sharing today's lesson helps prevent another problem tomorrow." He looked through the terminal windows toward the aircraft. "Then every minute we spent here was worth it." As passengers began walking down the jet bridge, many glanced toward Daniel with quiet respect. None of them knew his full story. But every one of them would safely reach their destination because one calm passenger had refused to rush when safety mattered most. And although the aircraft was finally ready for departure, one final surprise was still waiting before Daniel boarded the flight himself. As Daniel Brooks finally stepped onto Flight 728, the captain met him at the aircraft door with a grateful smile and a firm handshake. "Thank you," he said. "Because you stayed calm and did your job, every passenger on this flight can travel with confidence." Daniel smiled modestly. "Safety has never been about one person. It's about everyone doing the right thing." Officer Mark Collins watched from the terminal, knowing he would never forget that morning. He had learned a lesson more valuable than any training manual could teach: never judge a person by appearance, because true character is often hidden beneath quiet confidence. As Flight 728 lifted smoothly into the sky, everyone on board was unaware of how close they had come to a very different day. If you enjoyed this fictional story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you in the next Hidden Identity story.